Hello everyone. So this video is going to be relatively simple, but it might be a little on the long side. So basically what I'm going to be going over today is how to add multiple images to a sprite using p5play and the just p5.js library, how you can animate those images and how you can utilize, change and update those animations in order to be whatever you want. If you've watched this other videos on this channel before, you'll notice that I'm currently not in the bottom corner of the screen like I normally am. I'm just my lights went out until I replaced those bulbs. It's just a little dark in here, so I'm just going to be talking to you as the disembodied voice. So that being said, let's just jump right into it. So I've got a sketch here, and there's a link to this in the description below. And this sketch already has the p5play library loaded in. I'm not going to go over how to do that right now. I have there's several other videos, multiple on my channel included, that go over how to go about doing that. So I'm just going to skip right over that. So the first thing we need to do is make a sprite to put everything on our screen. So I'm just going to do that real quick. So I'm just going to make a variable called Sprite. I'm going to say Sprite is going to be the result of the create Sprite function. And I'm just going to put this right in the middle of the canvas. So the point of this video is to attach images to our sprite. Normally, the 4 arguments for the create sprite function in p5play is the x and y position of the center of your sprite, and then the width and height of it. However, once you attach an image to the sprite, it'll resize itself to match the image dimensions. So you still need them, but really these last 2 arguments aren't important in this context. It'll just update to whatever the dimensions of our photo are. So I've got that right there. The next thing we have to do is load in the images that we want to use. So to do that, I'm going to move this out of the way. But I've got a folder with several different animation frames that we can stick on our sprite. To do that, you can open up the file editor right here. And I am going to, let's see if I can, I'm going to make a folder. I'm going to call this slime underscore images. There we go. And say, okay. And you notice that that pops up right there. If I hover over the image, you'll see that the folder, you'll see that there's this little triangle that pops up to give us a few more options. And I'm going to upload some files. And in this folder on my desktop, I've got several files you can kind of see right over there. And that's what I'm going to be using to animate this character here. So I'm just going to select all of them, drag and drop them, and you'll see them all load and populate right here. One thing to note is that these images are all very small file size as well as just dimensions. I've selected all of them so far, and it is currently less than 6 kilobytes of data. You want these for web-based projects to be small files because storage is limited, buffering is a thing. It can be rather problematic and consuming if you have several large data files. So the smaller, the better. We can always scale them up, which is probably what we're going to be doing. So to load up the images, the next thing we want to do is call up function preload. So preload is a very useful function. I recommend that everyone use it whenever you are loading in external resources, whether it be these very small pictures, a sound file, a video, any kind of external file that is not managed by P5 or created while the sketch runs, load it in preload. What this will do is it's essentially used to load up all of these files before anything else happens. So you may notice it takes a little bit longer for your sketch to start up and go, but it'll avoid issues of where maybe your video is still trying to load up in order to be used, but you try to play it and you run into an error saying that it can't find the video, even though it has all the correct information. So by loading it in the preload function, it becomes much easier to manage. So let's just do this. Let's load in the images. So in order to do that, I'm going to actually create an array for each of my animations. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different animations in these images that we're all going to put on the same sprite. So I'm going to do that. Let just like so. I'll move 10, just like so. So what this will do is we'll be able to put all of the specific images for each animation type into the corresponding array. So what we can do is use for loops to load up all of these in pretty quickly. Hold on. We're going. Okay, I think we're going bit by bit. It's just a very, very slow connection at the moment. All right. I'm live streaming this. I have no script. We're just kind of going. It's internet's being annoying. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to make a for loop. And we're going to say let I, it's doing it like that, equals 0, 0, I is less than, so we have 0, 1, 2, 3 for a lot of these, so less than 4 I plus plus. So we got the first one there. So all but one of these animations have the same number of frames, which is very useful. So we can use a single for loop to load up multiples of these, and then we can just copy and paste it and make a slight adjustment for the rest. So what we can go in and say, let's see, so there we are. Okay, so let's start with idle, the idle animation. So we'll say idle, but specifically the I index is going to be a load image right there. And specifically, we're going to load, we need to do the string for our image location. So it is inside the slime underscore images folder. So inside that folder, so slash, and then the name of the file. So slime hyphen idle hyphen, and then we can just say plus I plus, and then there's a string dot png, and not slash, dot png. And what this will do is essentially take all of this information and combine it together in one string in order to find the data, that the file that we need. So what we can do is essentially just copy and paste this for the other ones. So idle, we can go in with move and just update all the words so that they match. Move, copy, and paste. So idle, move, and die all have the same amount of frames in them. So this is where naming your files, something very useful and very easy to work with, can come in handy. If it's just a bunch of garbage or randomly named files, this becomes a lot harder to do. But because these are all named, slime hyphen whatever the animation is hyphen the frame in that animation, and then they all have the same extension, it becomes very easy to load them all up in a for loop, and it takes essentially no time or computing issues at all. So it's very nice. So I've got that first one right there. I'm going to copy this for loop and paste it, and basically change this to be a for loop with an extra iteration, comparatively speaking. And instead of idle, I want this to be attack. Attack, like so. And this should load in all of our files. If I run this sketch, we should hopefully not see any errors related to that. And we don't. You may notice that it said loading for a second right up here at the top of the canvas. That's fine. Again, it takes just a little second longer for everything to run, but we're not getting any errors. So that means that it has found all of the images that the code expects to find. And while we aren't doing anything with them, they have been loaded into the sketch. I'm going to go ahead and just draw all the sprites to the screen so that way we can actually see what's going on, because otherwise I'll forget to put that there and then I'll be confused as to why I can't see anything. Okay, so we've loaded up all of the images and we've stuck them in an array. So what we can do now is attach them as animations to our player character sprite. So this is relatively simple, but it is just a little bit of a process. So in order to do this, we just have to tell our sprite, we're going to add an animation to it, and then we have to give that animation a name in order to refer to it by, and then all of the frames of that animation. So what I can do is, after we have made our sprite, we say sprite.add_animation. The first thing is the label. Idle is what we're calling this one. And then from there, all of the frames. So we can say idle, specifically the index, because this is where all the images are loaded. 1, idle 2, like so. And if I run this, we should see, boom, there's now a sprite with a picture on it. This picture has a clear background, so it blends in with the canvas, and it is also resized to the size of the image files, like I mentioned. So if we wanted to go in and adjust the scale after we've attached all of these, we can. But it's going to be pretty straightforward here, fairly repetitive. Only now we're just updating all of the names. So I've got idle, I'll say die, so while I'm just typing and going through all of this, I do just want to say that, if you are learning something, if you happen to enjoy the video, consider giving giving all this a like, subscribe, all that stuff. I'm sure some people are probably screaming as I'm just manually typing out all of this, but maybe not. Maybe you're enjoying my super clacky keyboard. I don't know, but it does help stuff out. So again, if you're learning stuff, you're enjoying it, consider liking, subscribing, all that. It's free. If you don't like it or you don't enjoy it, then don't, and you don't lose anything. So that's something else right there. Attack. All right, so we are almost done. Wrong button. I'll go backwards for these last few. And I'll point out a few things. So the first one is, you notice it's the same animation as before. So again, whatever the first one that you attach to your sprite, so in this case, whatever the first animation we added, in this case idle, that's what's going to be displayed on the sprite by default. Now we're not getting any errors. That's a good thing. And what that's telling us is that these other animations, they're all added to the sprite, but we can only display one at a time. So just depending on the contexts, we may need to, change and update them. So let's do that. First, though, I'm going to just make the sprite a little bit bigger, just so it's a little easier to see. There we are. So I've just made it twice as big in every dimension. Okay, so let's go. And I'm just going to make the move this with the keyboard. And I forgot. There we go. Forgot my parentheses. To 39. We'll start with here. There we go. Okay, so what I've just added, basically I'm going to control this with the arrow keys, but I can never remember the key codes for all the arrow keys and like what they pair up to. So I've added this down here so that way we can add it all up. So 39 is the right. 38 was up. 40, so 40 is down, and 37 was left. I'm also going to add in one for the spacebar. That up. So I'm 100% sure there are better ways and more efficient ways to go about that right here, but I'm just not going to do it. So we'll just go through right here. It'll be pretty simple. So I've added this in, and this is essentially just going to test every time we press a key, the computer's going to check, did you just press, these specific keys? If so, it's just going to do whatever code we tell it to do. So what we can do is say, if I press the right key, I can say sprite dot change animation, and specifically we'll go to move, and I'll say sprite dot set speed to go to the right. That is 0 degrees as far as I'm sorry, not 0. That should be I'll move it at 1. No, I'm hitting it 1. I'll move it at 5 pixels at a direction of 0 degrees, which as far as everything's concerned with P5 and p5play, that is horizontally to the right. All right, so we've got that right there. And actually, I'm going to set this up as a nested thing if let's see, how can let's see, properties, I'm just double checking a thing. Sprite dot. Okay, so if sprite dot animation is not equal to move, then we're going to make it move. If it's already equal to move, then, then there we go. And then we'll also say, I'll come back to this. Where's rotation? Or not rotation. There we go. Mirror. There we go. Mirror X. we'll say, instead of that, we'll say, and we'll leave that at 1. Okay, so this will be my kind of base template right here. So I'm gonna copy this and go down to the left. And basically I'm gonna make this flip the opposite direction. So where mirror X just mirrors the sprite animation or image on the X axis. 1 is, normal, and then -1 is, opposite that. And on a circle, the opposite of 0 degrees is 180 degrees. So if I run this, we should see that as I move left and right, nothing happens. Why did nothing happen? Oh, that's just because I'm an idiot and did mouse press instead of key pressed. Okay, so now my sprite is moving around, and you see, I'm going to actually slow him down to 2 pixels per frame. But you notice it was moving left and right, and the image was flipping around. So that little dot on the sprite is changing sides. Okay, so let's just bring that back. And I'll say, I'm actually going to give our, I'm going to give the sprite a little friction as well, just so it doesn't move forever in each direction. All right, so we've got that going right there. So now if we want to move it up and down, pretty similar idea. So I'm going to, for now, just copy this one for up. And this one for down. A lot of collections of sprites will have what's called a back sprite, or a image, an image of the back of the character. This isn't the case for this sprite, but normally, I would say I had an adventurer wearing a cape, and as I was walking, back or up in the case of this, a two-dimensional thing, it would. But I can't talk anymore. You would see the back, the cape of the sprite, but if they moved forward or down towards the bottom of the screen, you would see their front, so all their clothes. And then usually there's only one side-facing animation, and you use something like the mirror method I have here in order to make the sprite move up and or to face left and right, but it's the same animation either way. There we go. Oh, I forgot to change the direction. All right, so to move down, we're going to have to go at 90 degrees, and to move up, we're going to have to move at 270. So up, down. Oop, I got that backwards. This was still right, so 0 and up. There we go. All right, just a matter of typing the right things in the right places. Sometimes I feel like it gets stuck loading some stuff, but then other times it works fine. So up, down, like so. If you wanted to adjust some stuff, so maybe, if we're going up, we could also say, I don't know. Let's just see if this actually works like I want it to. Yeah, we could, move it like that. I'm not going to do that though, but that could be something you could do, is adjust the rotation in order to make it, rotate and look a little bit better. But I'm not going to do that just for the sake of time. So we've used the moving animation. Let's see. So So let's see, let's use the other ones. I don't need this anymore. If so basically what I'm checking here is, if the sprite is not moving, we'll say, well, either way, it's just going to call this forever. I'll say, I'll add a third one. And sprite.animation is not equal to idle. And we'll get rid of that extra parenthesis right there. Then we'll say sprite.change animation to idle. So now, got this here, and I move our sprite over. It's eventually going to slow down. It's eventually going to stop, and the animation will change. I'll give him some more friction to slow down, and it'll, I mean, this is a pretty similar animation. Change animation error, no animation labeled. Did I not? It's there. It's named idle. Ooh, this might be a different thing. But I did just notice that problem. That's weird. But anyways, I've got that there. So for changing back to the idle function right there. So let's go back and just use the other ones just to kind of wrap this up. So if I hit the space bar, we will say if sprite.animation is not equal to attack, sprite.change animation to attack. And I see should this not be a string? But now if I hit the space bar, it doesn't like that. Why doesn't it like that? Attack slime images / slime dash attack 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. That should all be fine. 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Oh, should they all be string? Maybe that's it. Sorry, it's sometimes, again, without adding a script, sometimes it runs into some weird stuff, but let's try that. Boom, boom. There we go. Okay, so now we can see the things move. Get that. There, if I hit the space bar, we've got that, and so on. So there's kind of two more things I want to talk about. There's a bunch of stuff you can work with in animations specifically, but where's the one specifically? Where'd it go? I'm looking at the p5play reference, and there is they may have switched something. Trim delay images, looping, playing. All right, well, I'm not gonna go through everything right there, but we've got this little image right there. But I was gonna see about making it automatically swap back, but I'll leave that for a different video. The last thing I'm gonna do is just pull in that last animation we've got. So we're here, I'm making the sprite. I'll say sprite.on mouse pressed. Right there, and we'll say, I don't know, I'll make it a little shorter. Die. Okay, so now when we click on the sprite, it's going to change the animation to die. It's supposed to change. There we go. Sprite.change animation die. Let's make you a little longer. Why didn't that change? Well, there's like, oh, it's because its velocity is still 0, and it's changing back. Okay, if, so we'll say, just weird and bad. It keeps kind of blowing up and going away. It's not really what we want. So there's one more little tip I'm going to put on here, and that is that whenever you make the animations, you can store them inside of a variable and affect the animation aspects themselves. So it's pretty straightforward. Basically, I'm just going to add lists here. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all of them. And we can just go back into where we're adding the animations, and we can say any equals, the name of our thing there, and we can add this in. So equals move animation equals, and there we are. Just to make, yep, that's all of them. So now we can go in and affect the properties of the animations themselves. A few different things. Whether or not it loops is the one I'm getting at, but you can, delay things, play them, go to specific frames, things like that. You can speed them up, slow them down. Pretty useful. So I'm just going to say, here's the little death animation. Dot looping equals false. So now the animation won't loop. Maybe I want to slow all of these down. There's a property called frame delay. So this is essentially the number of frames between, the number of frames of the draw cycle before the next picture. And by default, it's 4. I thought our sprite was moving kind of fast, so I'm just going to go in and slow it down. Just like so. I'm just going to copy and paste this like so, and just update the names. We are, and last one. All right, so this is kind of the end of everything I at least planned to show you all. So let's just run this and look at it. So we can kind of move this around bit by bit and kind of see our sprite moving around up and down. All the rotation stuff works out fine. If I hit the space bar, the attack goes. Ooh, I can go in here and I can say attack animation dot looping. Where'd it go? There we are. There we are. Oop. It helps if I spell. So that was something I was looking at doing a little bit earlier, just so it's not looping like that. But now if I hit the space bar, it's a little bit of fine tuning, but now it's no longer looping it. We kind of get stuck on that that bit. So I'll leave it out, but that is, again, you can fine tune your interactions. But last but not least, I click on the sprite and he kind of just melts, kind of slides a little bit because he's a slimy boy, and then eventually gonna disappear after, in this case, 500 frames. That's kind of a lot. I wanted 80 frames. Boom, and then they go away. And that's pretty much it. So I'll put actually a link to the animation stuff in the description. I don't think I have one right now, but I'll put a link to the animation materials, the reference stuff in the description alongside this code, just to kind of briefly reiterate everything we did, because this is a fair bit of stuff going on here. I loaded in all of these images using for loops to do that. For all my animations with the same amount of frames, you can combine that into the same for loop, just to help save you some timing, make life easy. So I did all of that. You want to make sure that the for loop runs for as many frames as you have, because otherwise you'll run into problems where either you won't have all of your frames, or that you'll get an error because there wasn't a frame there for the computer to load in and find. I did all of that in preload, so that way all of our files are ready to go before we even ran the sketch. I made the sprite, pretty normal here, and then I made all of the animations and added them to the sprite. So you have to give under the add animation method, you have to give it a label as a string, and then list out all of the frames in the order that you want them to appear. So in our case, this is just a very easy 0 through whatever, but you could omit frames, you could change the order, you could repeat them. That's up to you. There's no real rule for how you do that. You can put as many as you want in whatever order you want. So that's one thing I don't think I mentioned. By storing the animation inside of a variable like I've done here, we can go in and affect the animation properties. So we can slow it down, we can tell it not to loop, we can do a bunch of stuff with it, specifically with the animation. And that's a pretty useful tool whenever it comes around. Other than that, I've basically just set up various conditions in a very time-consuming method that went and changed the animation. So to do that, you just have to have your sprite here, and then with the change animation method as a string, I got that wrong in my code before, and that's why it wasn't quite working. But as a string, just give it the same label as you had up here when you added the animation to the sprite in the first place, and then it will change and update it. A few other small things I did, this is how you can go about having a sprite respond to being clicked on. Basically, you just make a small local function, and whatever you tell it in those brackets will be what happens when it gets clicked on. I had it set up here to check, what animation was specifically on the sprite by that name we gave it before. So that way, basically, if it had an animation other than the one we wanted, we would set it to the one we want. I can move it around with the keyboard in different directions, and again, each one would kind of set the proper settings for that. So anyways, that's going to be it for me. I'm going to kind of wrap this up here. I hope this was a useful video. Hope you learned something. If you did, you know, the whole like, subscribe, YouTube, blah, 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 you know the deal. And I'll see you all the next time that I see you.